Do you ever feel not quite good enough, a little unworthy, like what you're wanting to achieve is just beyond your reach? Well, I have a very powerful and simple solution for you. In today's video, we're going to explore the quiet power of dignity, why your private choices matter more than you think, and how increased self-respect can transform your life beyond recognition. At the end of this video, you will be equipped with a very simple solution to step into your next glorious act and start living to your greatest potential. I'm Michelle Dupree, and welcome on board, because together we are figuring out how to live our best lives. It's fabulous to have you with me. So what is dignity and why does it matter? Dignity is that deep and quiet strength that's born of self-respect. It's not the illusion of perfectionism. Dignity is our human birthright, and self-respect is when we give expression to that. It's not about being above others. It's not about abandoning yourself even when life strips everything away from you. And what really got me thinking about this was my exploration of this novel by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. And through this novel, we travel through the day, we see that a day in a Siberian gulag, just sort of post-World War II, through the eyes of Ivan Denisovich Shukov. And it really stayed with me. Look, there's many things to be said about this book, and you can draw all sorts of political parallels. But what really stayed with me and what has really made an impact on my life is the idea of dignity and survival. Not sort of dignity and sipping a cup of tea. It's like the real dignity that is going to keep you alive under the harshest of conditions. So this book, this day, was set in midwinter in the gulag, and the conditions were frozen and horrendous, and these people were on the brink of starvation, and every effort was undertaken by the authorities to dehumanize them. And I saw again the power of dignity and the freedom of the power to choose. Shukov goes to breakfast, and we see him in our mind's eye as the reader. We see that first we are introduced to the idea of dignity, and he sits down to breakfast. And it's a very crowded, messy hut with men jostling, and there's just this element of chaos and grappling for food, and this necklace keeps sticking to the magnet. Sorry. Anyway, he went to the dining hut, and he always, when he sat down in this icy cold frozen hut, he took his hat off, because that's what a person does. That's what you do when you're sitting down and having a meal. And he sits up straight and he eats his meal. And he eats his meal quite slowly. And he eats his meal with dignity and deliberation. So what small rituals and standards can you uphold as powerful reminders that you matter? And we continue to see the face of dignity throughout this novel. They, after breakfast, they muster, and then they leave the camp and they walk towards their work duty for the day. And they walk across the frozen tundra, and they arrive at this power station that they are busy building, and they are frozen and they're hungry all over again, and they've got to do a hard day's work. But the work is in actual fact what keeps them sane. And Ivan Denisovich, towards the end of the day, they eventually got to work after they had to figure out all of the, just figure their way through chaos and malfunction and the disorder that was the Soviet socialist empire. and he was a bricklayer, and he was working a couple of stories up, and the men were bringing up mortar and bricks, and he was working with such pride. And as the day was drawing to a close, there was still some mortar and some bricks, and he wanted to get the materials finished. He didn't like waste, because it was inherently in him to abhor waste, even though it wasn't his material and he had nothing to lose or gain from it. And he started working harder and harder, and everybody got buoyed up by his enthusiasm, and he was very precise and very proud of the work that he was doing. And it was time then for them to leave the camp and walk back, so they had to go down and muster and be counted to be able to leave the building again. But Zhukov, boy, I tell you, he cut it to the very end, and then still risked being late. By then all of his colleagues had run off because they didn't want to be late, because you risk being beaten by the guards. And Solzhenitsyn writes, "But Zhukov, and if the guards had put the dogs on him, it would have made no difference. Ran to the back and looked about. Not bad. Then he ran and gave the wall a good look over, to the left and to the right. His eye was as accurate as a spirit level, straight and even. Hands were as young as ever. He dashed down the ramp." So the dignity for Ivan Denisovich, the dignity that was provided by the work, allowed him to feel a deep sense of personal fulfillment, a sense of self-respect, which reaffirmed his worth as a human being, in spite of the inhumane conditions he was forced to endure. He lovingly takes the last look at his wall that he built with his hands and risks being beaten in order to feel human. But oh, my favorite character who's the epitome of dignity. And honestly, when I sit down to a meal in the evenings on my own, I think of prisoner U81. So at dinner time, Solzhenitsyn was again having a watery, fishy, not even remotely nourishing meal. And someone came to sit opposite him, and he observed him and he described him. And this was prisoner U81, one of the oldest prisoners in the camp. He had served several successive sentences, and it was like that. Ivan Denisovich knew that when this sentence ended, they'd probably add on another one for some ridiculous reason or change the law. So seeing this man sitting opposite him was like his alter ego for the future. And he describes this man as having a steady gaze. His eyes weren't darting all over. His back was ramrod straight. He took out a cloth, a freshly washed piece of rag, and he put it down on the table, and he put his bread down on the table. And when he ate, he took the spoon to his lips. He didn't lean over and shovel the food into his mouth. He sat there with quiet dignity, and Solzhenitsyn describes him as having a face that was hard and dark like stones, like stone, and fists that were blackened like slabs of granite. And he was a survivor because he had understood the power of dignity. And I really love this. I love this metaphor for dignity, because dignity reminds us that we are not powerless, and we must act to reclaim that self-respect. We must reclaim the care, even if it is just in the little things, because it rewires our sense of self. Where in your life have you stopped showing up fully because you have told yourself that it doesn't matter? I've left a link below to a workbook if you'd like to explore the ideas in today's video a little further. The midlife pivot. Midlife can feel like a place where we're just surviving, and we have old habits and we feel increasingly insignificant. Midlife can feel like a wasteland. It can feel desolate and hopeless. But the wonderful news is that we can, with dignity, we transform routine into ritual. We can transform scarcity into simplicity, and we can transform survival into meaning. It's just a shift in awareness. For each of us, this is going to be different and unique, but it is the small acts of maintaining our living spaces. For me, it's tidying the garden, living in a clean and ordered space, having my evening meal at the table with my back straight, inspired by Prisoner U81, with a napkin to dab my lips before I sip my drink so that I don't make my glass mucky. And I live on my own. It is the power of the little things that are actually not small at all. For me, what Solzhenitsyn captured so profoundly in this novel is the idea that dignity isn't about status or recognition. It's not something that you perform for others. It's something that you practice in quiet moments when no one's watching. And then it becomes your character and it changes your trajectory. Ivan Denisovich Shukov, he doesn't scrounge. He eats with care, he works with dignity, he takes his hat off at meals, even in the freezing cold, in alignment with his values. And that's the quiet power that I want to leave you with today. Because these small acts, how we fold our laundry, we take our makeup off at night before we go to bed, we sit up straight and we stand up straight even when we're alone at home, the way we respond when life is hard, unbearable even, it shapes the spirit. It allows you to tap into dignity, your essence, which is the greatest power of all. Tony Robbins says, you are rewarded in public for what you practice in private. The acts of self-respect you choose in private become the strength that you walk in publicly, the things we do in private. The other day, a friend commented that I have a lovely neck, a lovely décolletage. And I thought that was really interesting because in private, every night I've got 5 kilogram weights and I do a little thing, well, probably about 5 nights a week. And I work my biceps and I do these things, whatever they're called, and I work with these weights. And I suppose it has given me a reasonable décolletage. I've never actually stopped to think about it until she commented, and I just thought, cool, thank you. So yeah, what we do, that's a simple metaphor, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So when you hold yourself high, you hold your head high, not in arrogance, but with dignity, even when no one is watching, that's the moment you become unstoppable, because you have earned the respect of yourself. So remember, stand in your truth. You are enough, which means that you have that inherent human dignity within you, which is your birthright. You fit in. You belong. There is a place in this world for you, and you are going to shine. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.